welcome to Queer Conversations. I'm your host, Gia Vera GTV. Vera GTV. It's been a while since I've been here. Today, my guest is Lorenzo Robertson of Ujima Men's Collective. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So, I know you do a lot in the community. And let's start off with the Ujima Men's Collective.
Okay.
I've heard of it, but I don't really know what you guys do. So,
okay, primarily.
Sure.
Okay, the Ujima Men's Collective. We really want to build a collective or a group of Black same-gender loving men nationally, but we started locally. We do it basically trying to bring them together to work together. We think about Ujima as one of the 7 principles of Kwanzaa,
Right.
and it's collective work and responsibility. So we're trying to bring men together to be responsible for their actions and who they are, and really to be able to live in the light. So therefore, they own their sexuality, they own their sexual orientation, and they are living in the light and not in the shadows.
Okay, great. And when did it start?
It initially started in 1999 when we were doing the initial conference that we did was called the African American Male Institute. And after that, I realized, because that was open to all men, regardless of your sexual orientation.
Okay.
But I wanted something that was going to be more specific to Black same-gender loving men. So we started the Ujima Men's Collective, and the focus is on Black same-gender loving men.
Okay, and so you're doing it locally and outside of South Florida?
Right. We just did one of our mini conferences, or one-day conference. We did one in Jacksonville and one in St. Petersburg in June, the 2 middle weekends in June.
Okay.
So we were up there and we did workshops, we had speakers and lunch and all that type of stuff. So It's been very interesting so far.
Okay, great. And how do people learn more about Ujima? Like, are you on social media and so on?
Yeah, you can go to our website, which is ujimamen.net, and Ujima is UJIMAMEN.net, or we can find us on Facebook as well as in Twitter.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I know that you are personally that you're a writer, and you spend much of your life writing. And when did you start?
Well,
writing?
I started like in high school. I used to write little things, and I was like, oh, that's crap, and I threw it away. So I started writing like poetry and little short stories when I was in high school, and then as I got older, I kind of put it away for many years, and then I was with an ex-partner, and we were writing together, and they were writing, I was writing, so then I wrote a book of poetry, and I wrote a novel, and those type of things.
Nice.
I've done those so far. And I'm currently working on my sequel to the novel, which I've been working on for like 10 years. I just haven't finished it.
Wow.
So I haven't gotten really back into writing a lot. So.
Okay, well, I was about to ask you how do you, to talk a little bit about completing, because I write as well, and I write, well, what I write like probably is mostly is like short pieces, like articles, essays, but I'm working my memoirs, and that's taking a long time.
Yeah.
So I know this one is taking 10 years. Did the other book take 10 years?
No, the other one, I wrote it in about a year.
Wow, that's what I would love to.
And I would write like every night. I would write from midnight to like 2 to 3 in the morning. Because at the time, my partner and I, we had a business, and we actually had a publishing company.
Okay.
So that's what we did. So therefore, during the day, I was doing business, and then I would be able to get up like at 10 or 11. I could stay up to like 2 or 3 in the morning to write. And that was the best time because it was quiet, no one was talking, and I was in an area that was dark, and I had my computer, and I was just thinking and writing and thinking and writing. So it wasn't. So that was kind of my writing process.
Right, to get in the habit of it. Did you have like the whole book outlined and then wrote to it, or did you write like?
I just really kind of listened to the characters in terms of telling their story and things that they wanted to share. So that was kind of how I wrote, more so than having an outline and then going from the outline. I just kind of listened to the different characters and the stories that they wanted to share. Some things that, of course, it comes from your own personal life, so you're kind of thinking like, oh yeah, that happened. But some of it was also just the character driving where they were
Right, and
going.
this is fiction.
Yeah, it's fiction.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the imagination.
Yeah.
I love that. Let's see here. As a writer, what are some things that inspires you? Any favorite authors? That's from Nikki Lopez. Thank you. Greetings. Thanks for joining us.
I don't know. Writing is just kind of something I've enjoyed, and Walter Mosley. Actually, I have his book. I'm reading one of his books now. I really like him as a writer. He really just paints a picture for you. He can write the person's walking across the room, but he can write 3 paragraphs about them walking across the room.
Yes.
So yeah, it's really compelling the way he writes and gets you invested into the story and the characters. So I really like his writing.
Yes. Let's see here. Okay, thanks for joining us, everyone. Star. Yes, anybody has any questions, join the conversation, comments, please join in. We're here with Lorenzo Robertson. He's with the Ujima Men's Collective, and he's also been writing for many years, right? Which is great. Have you thought of writing like your memoirs or any like?
Actually, I've been thinking about that. I've been thinking about different stories, different things that have happened in terms of what would I want to include, which things I would want to exclude, and just kind of it's just been a thought at this point, though. It hasn't really been anything that I've been saying that I have to write my story, not just yet.
Okay.
So.
And I usually ask people who are on the show if they're comfortable to share a little bit about your coming out story. If you have any, I'm sure you've had a few stories, but like one that you feel like whether it was the first time you came out or something really impactful, or.
I think the one that really was when I came out to my mother. So I had gone home specifically that weekend to come out to her, to let her know that I was a same-gender loving man, I was gay, I was homosexual, I was a punk, I was whatever,
Right, whatever.
To all of those types of things. So I had gone home that weekend. And so my mom and I, we were talking, and I had gone into her bedroom. She was in bed, and I was at the foot of the bed just talking. I mean, we talked about everything when I was a 5-year-old, when I was in school, when I was in high school, just a lot of different things because I knew what I was trying to get to, and I was just trying to get there, and I was like, and then I finally said, Mom, I've chosen an alternative lifestyle.
Wow.
She was like, okay. What does that mean? Then I explained to her. I'd say, well, that means I like guys instead of girls. And she was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And that was kind of it for and we never really delved into it too much further. She knew what it meant, but that was kind of the extent of the conversation. And she asked some other questions about different people that were in my life, different friends, those types of things, to know if they were gay or were they this or who were they to me, those types of
try
things.
to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right. So she wasn't. It wasn't a negative experience. It was more just like trying to like navigate like what does this really mean and somewhat supportive.
It was
trying to figure it out.
It was very supportive, and I think the support came later when I was doing a Pride event when I lived in Tampa. And I actually had her come and speak to the audience about being a mother of a son who's gay and those types of experiences. And she was open to answer questions from the audience and those types of things.
Okay.
So that's when I really realized that she was okay with my sexuality. So it was I think later, like years later, to demonstrate that her acceptance was that we were in church one night and the minister made some comment about gay people or something, and she was like, so she was ready to get up and walk out, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna, And so later on the night, we were talking about, she's like, well, when she said this about gay people, I thought we were gonna leave, and I said,
wow, go mom, I like that.
So she was getting ready to walk. I said, we can just stay. It's not I understand where they are, and that's where they are. And she doesn't know people, or she does, and she hasn't accepted people. So that's her story. That's where she is right now. That
particular minister.
Yeah, and my mom was kind of like, I thought you were going to get up and go. And then my mom shared the story with my brothers, and they called me like, that's just messed up, man. She shouldn't have said that about gay people. And so, very supportive.
Very supportive.
Yeah.
Is this a church that your mom goes to regularly? Like it's her church?
No, it wasn't our church. It's an affiliate of our church, but it wasn't our home church.
Okay, because I'm wondering, like, would you have the conversation with that minister to say, hey?
Yeah, he wasn't my minister, so I didn't.
Okay, but that's great that your mom is that supportive.
Yeah, she was like, are we leaving?
Yeah, I feel that. I know that in addition to all of this work that you're doing, that you do a lot in the HIV arena.
Yeah, I do HIV work. I'm an HIV tester. I do HIV counseling, those types of things. I work for a program, and we do it for HIV negative as well as HIV positive people. So I do those type of programs in my day job. So,
okay. Yeah. So I read your bio, and I know you from seeing you in the community.
Okay.
Hey, how you doing?
Right.
But I didn't know when I read it. I was struck by that you said that you are HIV positive, and that you shared a little bit about how that impacted, like just in terms of how you contracted it, like how you could have been more responsible.
Right.
So if you could share a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, it was just when I was finally diagnosed, because I think I obviously had for many years prior to my diagnosis, because when I was diagnosed, I had like 11 T cells. So, you know, you go from HIV to AIDS, and when you're below 200 T cells, you're AIDS positive.
Oh, okay.
So when I got my diagnosis, I had just bypassed HIV altogether, and I was AIDS positive when I was diagnosed originally. So, you know, that was kind of a little jarring.
Of course.
But it was also kind of like, well, this is just something else that I have to live with and I have to deal with. And that was kind of my attitude toward it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to die tomorrow.
Right, yeah.
I didn't have that attitude. It was kind of more so about what are the other things I want to do with my life, and what does God have to do for me to live my life. I wrote a short piece about I Ain't Mad at God, and it was really about, you know, living with HIV, how I got it, how, you know, being HIV positive and living with AIDS, but not asking God, like, why did you choose me to be HIV positive as opposed to all the millions of other people in the world? Never asking that question. It was just like, there was obviously a reason why you thought that I needed to be AIDS positive to share my story with other people.
Helping people.
Exactly.
And what is it that you feel like when you're saying how you maybe like could you have avoided it, or like your behavior, like if you could go back in time, like.
I mean, if I could go back in time, I probably could, but I mean, the specific incident, I don't know. So therefore, I could say, I'm gonna go back to this year, and it was the day before, you know? So, you know, I mean, but if I could go back, of course, I probably would start to think about being more responsible, making sure that I use a condom all the time and not just sporadically, those types of things. So, yeah.
And so when you do HIV counseling?
I do testing and counseling.
Okay, and you share your personal story?
No, we don't.
No, you don't share your personal story.
No, we really talk about it's client centered, so it's really about them and their story, making sure that they're living there wherever they are. If they're HIV negative, after they get tested, or if they're HIV positive, it's really about what's next with their story.
Okay. So not to laugh at this, we just have some behind the scenes.
No, you guys look great. Don't worry.
Thank you. It looks a little bright here, but I figure over there it's fine. Yeah.
No, it looks a little bright there too.
Okay, yeah. So it's interesting because my younger son, who just turned 18, was asking me about the experience of what was it like when HIV came around. And I was like, oh, because his whole life it's nearly maybe like cancer. Oh, and it's not epidemic with wise like for his generation, but he knows. So he was like, what was that like? And I was like, oh my gosh, I was like 8, 9, 10. And it was like, it's the first time I heard of Rock Hudson.
Oh, okay.
And it was a big deal in the 80s.
Right.
I was living in Kingston, Jamaica, and it was definitely like gay man disease.
Right.
And lots of negative language around it in terms of like, that was a curse for this community. And so I was telling him how it was like, and to me, what shifted in my mind was like when Magic Johnson got diagnosed, and that was one of the first people that didn't just like perish.
Right.
You know, and so there's a shift in like people surviving and also looking good.
Exactly.
So it's like, so that's great, but then wonder sometimes that makes people feel like we're good.
Yeah, and I think what happened with Magic Johnson, for whatever reason, we thought that was going to be the wake-up call for everybody, and that HIV infection rates was going to plummet because people now know that, you know, people like Magic can get it, so it's not just a gay man's disease.
Exactly,
but it didn't really have that impact that we thought it was going to have.
Because he just like
he
flourished.
Kept living, he kept living, but then we knew people who were HIV positive, they kept dying. It was like, oh, because he's rich, but it wasn't that. It was that he was taking the medication, he was taking care of himself, he was exercising, he was eating healthy, he was doing the things that you need to do, and anyone can do that regardless of your socioeconomic status. It doesn't matter, because you can eat healthy even if you're extremely poor. You still make better food choices, and you can exercise and do those types of things that's going to benefit you, your physical being. And I think that was one of the things that and people just kind of still had that same negativity toward HIV. It was still about a gay man's disease, primarily a white gay man's disease. So it wasn't really about black people.
Right.
So all of those types of things, that type of information, we were still dealing with that and still trying to combat it with how do we talk about HIV, because in black communities we don't talk about sex.
Right.
So parents don't usually have the sex talk with our kids. So therefore they're learning things from their counterparts and their peers. They don't know anything, and I'm telling you, it's the blind leading the blind. And that was the kind of stuff that was going on. So if we were having more transparent conversation with our youth to tell them what HIV is, to really talk about sex, talk about sex, sexuality, all those types of things, I think we would have a greater impact on HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases.
Do you think black folks are still not talking to their kids about sex, or it's like? I mean, of course, this is general, but you're saying, and just saying we need to do it more.
I think we need to do it more. I don't know if we are having those particular conversations about sex and sexuality with our kids.
Okay, another question. Thanks for the question, Nikki. Hey, Momo, thanks for joining. What are some of the stigmas surrounding HIV and AIDS, and how can we educate people to see different?
Well, I mean, I think really it's about just looking at HIV now it's a manageable, treatable disease. So it's not a death sentence as it was many years ago. And then we did more education. We do a lot of education in our community about HIV, all the different organizations in Broward County specifically. They do a lot of educational work in the schools, in communities. But I don't know if we're really targeting those people that really need to hear the community, hear that message.
Who are the people who need to hear it?
I think the people who are needed are the ones who continue to become HIV positive.
Right.
But there are parts of the community where we don't necessarily go into. We feel as though if you're going into some poor neighborhoods, primarily black neighborhoods, maybe neighborhoods that we may consider dangerous, those are the neighborhoods I think that we really need to target and talk to those people because those are some of the areas that we're having higher rates of HIV infection. And we're getting into those areas, but not as much as I think we need to. And really to have open, honest, and transparent conversations with the community about HIV, what it is, and that it's really a disease that impacts everybody. It's not just for gay men, it's for heterosexuals. And here in Broward County, we have high rates of HIV among black women, as well as young same-gender loving men as well.
Wow. And why, do you know why, like black women, why our community more?
We're struggling with that because we don't have a clear understanding. We do think that some women are maybe looking at people or looking at men that they're sexually involved with and they're saying, oh, he looks good, he doesn't look like he has anything, he doesn't look like he's gay, so he doesn't have HIV.
Right, and then
all those types, and then they have unprotected sex, and then they become positive. Or some women are at the age whereas they are, especially older women, they've been engaged in relationships and then they get divorced or their husbands die, and now they're entering into this new dating world, and they may not be, equipped to ask those questions about what's your HIV status, when the last time you were tested, those type of questions, or to make sure that condoms are being used.
Right. Let's see here. Born a star. Glad you didn't take it as a death sentence. Yes. Oh. Yeah, definitely glad about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I wanted to ask too, we had an event a couple of weeks ago. It was African American Research Library, Dark Woman, National Gardenia Society, and the Broward County Library did something, and I think, let me say, it was the first time the African American Research Library did anything in the LGBTQ community. Okay. And we found there that people were saying, this is here in Fort Lauderdale, South Florida, that people were saying that they needed more across the board LGBTQ, a sense of community for people of color.
Right.
I know that you've done some things, right?
Yeah.
And my focus has been women, right? And so, and women of every color and every age, but obviously still I'm black and very concerned about like, what about black folks, regardless of age, but black folks. So just like, what are your thoughts and what's happening here and sense of like, people just were feeling like they felt disconnected. They didn't feel there existed a actual black gay community here, LGBTQ community.
Well, I think a part of it is that we are still in that mindset that when we think about being gay, even though some of us are very open, we are very connected, and we are accepting of our sexual orientation, that may not permeate through our community. We do a group called Brothers Speak at the Pride Center. But we do that. We meet weekly, and it's for black same-gender loving men to have conversations around issues, perspectives, but it's all centered around being black same-gender loving men. And that's a weekly meeting. And they used to have a Black Pride here when SF Makalani Mahi was alive. He used to do Black Pride, and that was, it wasn't as well attended as I would have liked it to be, but I don't know if there's anything that's around that particular venue to bring people together. And that's been a challenge that when he was alive, there was a challenge for him. I mean, I think for Stonewall, there was a black stage or something. I wasn't here, I was in Jacksonville. Okay. There was a black stage, and then there was another event like the following weekend. But I think it was people who didn't live in this community. They lived somewhere else and just came and had an event. Right. And it wasn't, so local people were not necessarily as connected to that. So I think that we need to look at I think a part of it for me is that we don't have a central location to say that this is our space for
Where's
Black
our
same
space?
loving men and women, and
Right.
where do we
Right.
exist as a community?
So the libraries had opened their doors that for Pride and said once they saw, it was interesting because we had a panel discussion, and I wanted to make it and said to people it's going to be interactive. It became beyond interactive. At some point, it was a meeting. It was a full-on meeting, which I love, and it was dynamic. And everybody people just were just like, you could feel like people said they were in pain. People felt isolated. Someone said he tried to kill himself 4 times. And so they said, hey, we would love to have something. So perhaps I'm hoping and I'm willing to work towards that. So maybe that could be a space. They don't have food and beverage. Sometimes that's hard if you have that to work up. But I think that's a good point. Like if there's a space that we knew that people could come and be with each other, then it becomes a challenge. Sometimes people feel like, well, no, are people going to come out to it? This was like, oh my gosh. I mean, a lot of people came, and then I think people would come, but sometimes it's hard to be consistent.
Right.
You know? And
some of it, that's the consistency. Sometimes we do an amazing event, and then we don't do another one for a year.
Yeah.
Do an amazing event, then it's like, what about next month?
People want something.
Yeah, we need something that's a little more consistent also.
Let's see here. In your opinion, what are some ways we can impact and educate the most vulnerable communities? I can't read the rest of the question. Of color.
Okay. I think by really taking it upon ourselves to actually go into those communities and not skirt away from it, and to recognize that the people in those communities are our people. They look like us. They respond to things like we do.
Right.
So therefore, we shouldn't be afraid to go into those communities. And I think sometimes that becomes the barrier sometimes in terms of actually trying to educate the community. But it's also trying to find those gatekeepers in those communities that's going to say, okay, it's okay for Lorenzo to come and talk to you guys. It's okay for G to come and talk to you, because if we don't have that buy-in from a community, like the gatekeeper in the community, it could be Big Mama, it could be the man a guy under the tree, it could be a drug dealer, it could be anyone in the community, because all communities are going to be different. But finding that person who's going to say they're okay to allow you to go in and talk to the community, and then when you're in there talking, being honest and open about who you are and saying, yeah, I'm a same gender loving man. Okay. What does that mean? Okay, I interact, I'm sexually involved with other men. Like, oh, you gay. Okay, you can say that, but I choose same gender loving man. I want to ask you about that, because I've noticed you said it several times during a conversation. And in Jamaica, I've heard that also. And so the first time I heard it was actually somebody who was doing a survey in Jamaica, and they said when they use the word gay, a lot of men felt no. But then, but it was like, it actually say men who have sex with men. Yeah. Like, so I'm curious as to, your sense of why you say. I use same gender loving men because it kind of gives me a connection with other men, and it's about being loving toward my other brothers. Okay. It's not just about sex. It's also about the intimacy. It's about building family, those types. So it's really about something beyond sex with just another man.
I like that a lot.
So that's kind of what it's about, and it's really about building community with other men.
I love that. So what do you feel about the word gay? Do you not use it at all? What do you think about the word?
I don't necessarily use it because I think it's a Eurocentric word. More so white community, they use gay because it permeates in their community. It's very prevalent, and that's what they use. And when I hear gay, that's what I think. I think of a white, blonde, blue-eyed. That's what I think of. I don't think of me. So when I think of a same gender loving man, I think of people who look like me, brothers, that type of stuff. So that's kind of why I use it for my own.
And people in the Ujima circle, that's what they say, not say gay?
Some of them, it just depends. Some of them use same gender loving, and some say gay. Some of them choose homosexual. One of my friends, he said, I'm a punk, I'm a sissy. Because again, you have to embrace what feels comfortable to you, and that's what a lot of, and that's what we allow everyone to do. You choose words and terminology that best suits you, that feels good to you, that you can feel comfortable in your skin.
Right, like some people say queer now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like that. That's a great point. Let's see here. What does the word Ujima mean? What does it say?
Mean to you.
Mean to you. Okay, what does it mean to you?
Well, when I think of it, I mean, for me, I go back to, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa and really to look at collective work and responsibility. It's really to bring Black, same gender loving men together, making sure that we're responsible for each other, and also so we can educate, inspire, and encourage each other to be better than we were before, and also to do things for not only for us as same gender loving men, but also for the greater community.
Right.
So that's kind of how I look at Ujima for me.
Well, this is great work. I love everything that you're doing.
Thank you so much.
Great. Yes, so we're going to be wrapping up, and I have what I call queer conversation closing questions. I just ask them and you just answer pretty quickly.
Okay.
Let's see if there's another question
it's like
here.
a rapid fire thing.
Yeah. We choose the words. Yeah, Momo's saying, Monique is saying that. Yeah, I like that. Let's see here. What inspires you?
I mean, I think the next generation, because I don't want them to go through some of the things that me and people in other. I want them to have a better and easier way of living their truth.
Right. Okay, I like that. I'm like, what are my questions again? What makes you laugh?
I think real things that happen in real life, like when someone falls, not that they hurt themselves, but the whole idea that things happen. And we live in a real world, shit happens. So therefore, I'm sorry.
No, you can curse on my show. This is fine. You can curse on the show.
But stuff happens, and those are the type of things that I find really funny. Real life incidents that happen.
Okay, and what's sexy to you?
My husband.
Oh, nice. I like that. Great answer. How long have you been married?
We got married in 2015.
Okay.
So yeah.
Congrats.
Thank you. Our anniversary is coming up next month. So.
Okay, nice. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And so the last question is, what's so great? I'm just trying to think of how you define yourself. What's so great about being a same gender loving man?
For me, it's really that I can be creative, I can be honest, authentic, I can really be myself, and don't have to worry about what other people think of me. I use a Dennis the Menace quote.
Okay.
It's like the very best thing I can do is to get very good at being me.
Excellent. I love that.
That's it.
Lorenzo Robertson, Ujima Men's Collective, writer, and dynamic LGBTQ advocate. Same gender loving man. I love it. Yes. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. And thank you all for joining me. Share this show. I'm doing now monthly, so I'll be back in August.